All right, welcome back, Honors. So we stopped right here on Friday, right? We were talking about the Assyrian expansion. We talked about flaying, which is, I didn't say Siri, I said Assyrian. Every time I'm doing this, my phone like freaks out. Now, anyway, talked about what flaying was, which scares the ever-loving daylights out of me. It's like making human pajamas. Talked about a lot of really interesting stuff about the Assyrians, right? Now, we left off talking about how they had successfully, between 850 and 650 BC, defeated and conquered Syria, Palestine, Babylon, Egypt, Hebrews, and the Phoenicians, right? This era was known as Neo-Assyria, talking about like their largest, that their empire ever actually stretched. And during this period, they're actually going to move their capital from Ashur, which is A-S-H-U-R, which is actually named for their chief god, and they're actually going to move it to Nineveh, which is I-N-I-N-E-V-E-H, right? So a lot of really interesting stuff about the Assyrians and their ability to do this. Really quick, though, Magrino, I got to hit you up. I know that I was supposed to invite somebody to come into this thing. Rufio! Rufio, come here, bud. Come here, puppy. Rufio. You want a treat? Works every time. Rufio. Oh, there's a baby. Hey, big Sreepy. So he's a hound baby, so he likes to just sleep all the time. All right, but anyway, so this is Rufio. He's a very big baby. Now, anyway, but stay up here with me. All right, anyway, now. So, anyway, now, the Assyrians, we talked about, like, their brutality. Well, got into it a little bit, anyway. And the big thing about it, what, you want to say hello? All right, so, anyway, big thing about it, though, a lot of people, oh, whoa, first of all, let's talk about this. I think somebody like, my guys, like Christian, you might think this is really cool because you liked all talking about, like, the weaponry and things like that. And I think Mario might find this really interesting. Okay, he's leaving now. He has to go lay down. Well, he's laying down on the kitchen table now. But anyway, this is a really cool system talking about just kind of the complexities of the Assyrian military. So the Assyrians are actually going to develop specific units of like soldiers, which we'll talk about specifically in a second, but I know I don't have it on the next slide. This is a really cool system of shield men and archers that actually stand behind the shields. So the Assyrians would roll up to siege a city, and to try and take out as many people as they could early on, they would actually have a unit of shield men who would throw up these large shields, like taller than most men. Archers would stand behind it, pop out, like let off a couple of arrows, and then actually come back behind it to avoid like being hit themselves, which is a really, really neat thing. They also had pikemen, and then as well as these other people we'll talk about as well. Now, this was really cool. We also started talking about in class on Friday, the use of like Assyrian propaganda. So between 850 and 650 BC, when they reached their height, they had to use things like this to try and quell rebellions, right? There are a lot of historians that believe that there's a small chance that the Assyrians were not actually as brutal as people expect, right? So some people believe that they may have actually done these things or shown these things to try and make it so people didn't rebel or maybe prevented rebellions. Or a lot of other historians believe, according to some old texts and also in Israel and Judah, which is like the capital of the Hebrew empires, or the Hebrew people, the ancient Hebrews. It sounds so dumb. A lot of people believe that actually these things might have been very real things. Because like this right here, as you can see, it's very faint. It's very difficult to see. But this is a relief, right? A recessive stone carving of the Assyrians actually using people on pikes to try and demonstrate what happens should a rebellion occur. They would sometimes make pyramids of heads, and they would also do this as well, which they would take a pike and insert it either through the pelvis or through the sternum right here, so the pike itself would actually get lodged right there, and then erect the body on a stick outside of a town to try and show what would happen, right? We already talked about how deportation was a thing that they used to try and separate people in their empires to prevent rebellions and things like that. But remember, this is like, you got to do, like, if you're going to pike somebody, you got to do it, like, right through there, due to the fact that if you do it through the stomach, they're just going to, like, slide straight down like a meat on a shish kebab, which is really gross. Also, they perfected the use of, like, large-base siege weapons. This is actually a big, large siege battering ram developed by the Assyrians, and actually the exterior of it is made of wood and leather, and they would actually push it all the way up to the walls of other cities. Now, we'll talk about these guys here in 2 seconds. We'll probably skip that because it's really messed up. Now, anyway, so the Assyrian army, though, biggest thing about their military is that they were the largest standing army that had ever been seen in the Middle East or the Mediterranean region, right? Now, speaking of that, when I say standing army, they actually, when you say standing army, you're now talking about a massively influential thing that the Assyrians developed that the rest of the ancient world hadn't even thought of yet, which is a professional army. That means that that is their job. They get paid to be a soldier, right? So that actually gave the Assyrians a huge upper hand. Now, not only did the Assyrians advance in technology, but they also had really great tactics to capture other kingdoms. Their army drew rams into city walls, which I just showed you a picture of. The Assyrian troops would throw ladders against walls of cities and climb up into the city's stronghold while archers launched arrows from beneath. One of the coolest things that I said I would come back to really quick, these people right here are called sappers, right there. All right, so you can see them right there. Sappers would actually be these people that would dig underneath, like dig huge tunnels underneath city walls and sap the origin of the enemy's walls so that they would actually weaken and fall. Sapper, to sap the energy of the wall, right? Sometimes they would also dig all the way under the wall and then try to like pop up from underneath, which is a genius idea when you're talking about ancient warfare, right? So you've got specific shield men, archers, siege weapons, flaying, pike bodies, pyramid heads, like, I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. There's an old story that I heard from a college professor, which I've always tried to find it but never could. He claimed to me that apparently to try and send word to other Jewish towns downriver not to rebel, they took rebelling people out of one town and slit their throat over top of a river and allowed the blood to drain into that river so the river would actually run red. Now, other really cool thing you need to write down real fast is the fact that, oh, where did I go? There we go. Is what the Assyrians are going to do as well with a lot of this information. Some of the biggest things the Assyrians did, notice where it says don't write this, right? So write this part instead. One of the biggest things the Assyrians are actually going to do as well is they're going to, what they're going to do with a lot of the conquered people's intelligence. The Assyrians created the very, very first huge multi-level houses for information libraries, right? They actually made gigantic, huge areas to like hold manuscripts and hold intelligence of other people. So they actually were seeking not only just military domination, but as well as the intelligence of these people they took over. Also, they used it as an economic gain, right? Like if you're taking over other cities, you're now bringing in trade routes, you're bringing in craft workers, you're bringing in plunder, you're bringing in a lot of different things. So the Assyrians became very wealthy. They're going to even like push their military far forward enough, though, that if there was like a river, this is a cool story. I love telling this one. If there were like a river between them and an Assyrian army in a city, engineers would actually build pontoons to bridge that river. A pontoon is like a very, very large inflated device, right? Really, really big, probably about like 5 to 10 yards long, and then they would actually use wood to bridge over top of it, so it's a floating bridge, and then actually pull dirt up on either side so they could take horses over. Now, the army was so organized, though, that it had specialized units. There were personal security for the king, archers, spearmen, rams, foot soldiers, shield men, right? Now, this is really neat. This is actually a story of a bunch of Assyrian, this is actually like a several thousand-year-old carving of Assyrian men using goat skin and inflating it, right there, you see the straw, inflating it with their mouth and then using it to swim across a river with horses tethered behind them and the horses swimming through the water as well. Because actually, if you didn't know this, horses are really decent swimmers. So, but that's amazing that they like created life jackets to swim across rivers to siege other people, right? The Assyrian army, though, is going to organize these conquered territories into an empire, right? The Assyrian king is going to pick governors from the dependent territories that are actually going to support rulers that side with Assyria, okay? So they're actually going to cut, I'm not saying Siri. Anyway, now, they're going to do this to try and keep any rebellions from happening, right? And if a conquered territory refused to pay taxes, Assyria would usually destroy the land and kill the people. So if there were any signs of rebellion, entire populations could be wiped out, their territories annexed, things like that. like that's what we were talking about with the propaganda. Hundreds of thousands of people were deported to work in Assyria as slaves. So the Assyrians are also going to bring about one giant piece of technology that you know of now, known as chariots, right? Chariots were a huge advent that actually were originally invented by, we believe, the Hittites. The Assyrians are going to perfect them, though. It's one of the most useful things that the Assyrians use. Now, they're then going to use them as means of quick transportation. They were two-wheeled, horse-drawn, and were used to smash their way through cities and the towns of their rivals. Now, the Assyrians, like I said, are going to use all of this technology to grow into one of the largest and most intimidating empires that the world had ever seen. The technology that they are going to perfect as well is the use of iron. Okay, the Assyrians were also some of the first ancient people to notice the quality and efficiency of iron over bronze. So they're going to learn this as well from the Hittites that they actually were neighboring with, because the Hittites were actually a little bit more northern. So they were stronger. It holds an edge. It's much more durable. And also you don't have to worry about finding tin to also mix with copper to create bronze. So it's actually much more useful in a sense. So, however, Assyria is going to eventually fall due to the fact that they made way too many enemies. So the Assyrians were actually taken over by the Neo-Babylonians. Make a jot and a notation of that somewhere in your notes. Led by a man named Nebuchadnezzar, right? Nebuchadnezzar, I believe, is spelled Nebuchadnezzar, the guy that was responsible for creating the Hanging Gardens of Babylon for his loved one. So he is going to actually create a huge coalition of rebelling cultures, and they're all going to attack at the same time, weakening Assyria from within and completely destroying their infrastructure. Assyria would eventually crumble, actually giving way to the Persians, right? So it goes Assyria, Neo-Babylonians, and they don't last for very long because here comes Cyrus the Great, right? So we'll talk about him starting on Monday. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend.